So, good morning. And those who are joining us virtually from different parts of the world, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. And I'm here in this session in my capacity as the focal point of local governments and municipal authorities constituency. Today is our second daily briefing at the COP26 process. The first one was on Tuesday. And this is being broadcasted from the Blue Zone at COP26 in Glasgow from Hall 4C. So for those who are in Glasgow, who have their access to Blue Zone, feel free to visit us. We will be here until 10 a.m. and after 10 a.m. our agenda will continue. In this sessions, our purpose is to keep our delegations, members, partners aware of where the agenda is going, where are the negotiations going on, define our strategies and define our engagement opportunities, and make sure that our voices are heard appropriately and our expectations are integrated into the outcome of COP26. Next slide, please. Just for those who have joined online virtually or for the first time, maybe it could be good to have a fresh, let's say, flashback, not fresh, flashback about who is LGMA, because the climate process is full of abbreviations, full of new definitions, full of new concepts. It would be good to know who are we and where we are. We are basically the official engagement mechanism of local and regional governments to the UN negotiations. This is, in fact, has been active since '95. In fact, together with business and environmental community, local governments have been following the process since the beginning. So as such, we have been one of the closest partners of the process. Obviously, the world is changing. For example, in 2013, our family of the networks of local and regional governments have created a global task force. And since 2013, the LGMA is also representing the global task force in the UN climate change processes. And who we are around 30 plus networks. This is a process where organizations submit their documents to the UN Climate Secretariat. They review and they open for the approval of parties. So it is a bit tedious and a bit cumbersome, so not all the networks can undertake such procedures. Therefore, while we are trying to reach out all those 30 plus who are engaged in the process, we do not want to limit ourselves, so that those organizations, especially networks at the national and regional level, who are not necessarily fulfilled the UNFCCC registration procedures, they can still receive updates, they can still find their ways, they can participate in our activities. So we try to be inclusive as much as possible. This applies to interventions, delegations, participation. So we are doing our best that everybody can be at least a diversity of local and regional governments, be it typology of the cities, be it countries, be it regions, are reflected, especially into the negotiation sessions. As we have been noticing, the climate agenda is evolving. There are new mechanisms like Marrakesh Partnership. Within the UNFCCC, there are many processes. We are primarily trying to engage in the process year-round. So there are workshops, there are especially mid-year talks in May and June. So as constituency, we also participate there. So it's not just this every year at the end of the year we are engaging. We are also trying to cover the rest of the process, because what is coming up to here is actually cooked before. So we have to be active there. And ICLEI has been serving as the focal point. Just let's remember, once again, it's not a day's event. It's not just 2 years. It's really a process that has to be developed and built. I mean, when we started in '95, obviously it was interesting for us because we already have had our global campaigns, climate campaigns, but in '95, there were very few networks who were working on this field. So relatively it was on the shoulders of a couple of us. In 2007, the UN climate space decided to come up with a new agreement. We were all happy because it was the moment where we said that, look, You ignored us in UNFCCC, you ignored us in Kyoto Protocol, don't make the same mistake. So there was this wave around the world, and you may remember that was on the way towards Copenhagen. So we mobilized a massive campaign. We have accredited many partners. We have many other organizations from UCID to C40. They all engage in this process through this roadmap. We have delivered in Copenhagen 3,000 commitments, and we have made the first launch, as you kind of see the space like that, and it was 1,200 people attending. But Copenhagen failed. It was a disaster. It was a shipwreck. But we said that we will not leave it. We will not give up. We said that local and regional governments believe in multilateralism. We believe in the global collaboration. We have tested this in local agenda 21. We know what it means for global efforts that they receive input from local governments. And for local governments, as long as there's a global regime, we can develop much more active at the national level. That's why we want to keep the global momentum on. Therefore, we continued. We had the Mexico City Summit. We had the first mayor and parliamentarian roundtable. And a bit surprising, we had the first text in the Cancun decision. There's a reference called governmental stakeholders for local and regional government. That was important. We went to Durban. Durban Adaptation Charter was developed. This was also important. Marrakesh Partnership was 2016 onwards. This was a wrong text there. I should correct it again. I kept the same file, I guess. In 2013, we have worked advanced with the Friends of Cities, creating a network of national governments, building on the success of Rio +20. We had the first Cities Day in Warsaw. We had the first Ministerial Mayor Forum in Warsaw, and we had the second COP decision. So this shows how much the importance of engaging inside the negotiations is also important for the outcomes. In 2014, we had Climate Summit, NASCAR, Data Reporting Platform, CDP, and ICLEI's Carbon Registry. Obviously, we came to Paris Agreement. We had a fantastic City Hall and Paris City Hall, and then we had the pavilion, Cities and Regions Pavilion. The first one was Local Government Climate Lounge. Now it is Cities and Regions Pavilion. In 2017, we continued with Talanoa Dialogue. We pushed the Talanoa Dialogues to be at every country and every city. That was contribution from LGMA. If we have not put this proposal, it was possibly just one-off event at the end of the year, but we had worked with negotiators so that it is impressive mobilization everywhere in the world. We said that Paris Agreement should be discussed. In 2018, new climate action summits, and we have elevated Friends of Cities to Friends of Multi-Level Action, and we came to multi-level action roadmap. Let's go to the next slide, Joe. So we are now in a virtual world as well. It's a hybrid world now. So what we are doing is that we participate in the official UNFCCC process, then we participate in presidential issues. For example, every presidency have their own tracking processes, their own initiatives, and this does not have to follow the UN procedure. So we have to be active, and different partners can take different role. And especially now, since Paris Agreement, we have this Marrakesh Partnership. There has been climate action pathways. We have the human settlements action pathway. We have Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, and we have Race to the Breakthrough. So in all of these, we are engaging. But unfortunately, there are two weaknesses of this process. One, each mechanism has different modality. Registration, participation, access, each of them is different. It is so hard, of course, to manage the process because it's confusing for many people. The second weakness of this process is that it is not that we can do and we can say whatever we want. We have to respect and obey the rules, the leaders, either UN or UNFCCC. So it's a bit like a give and take. You get some, you decrease your expectation in terms of your contributions. You cannot free, but there is a value because then you can interact with more other partners and parties, and the outcome can be more impactful. So it's a give and take process. Therefore, LGMA-led events processes are still important. These are not alternative to the UNFCCC mechanisms. These are not replaceable. So we should still keep our constituency, our collaboration, but we should also try to engage in the UN-led processes. And here comes this pavilion now we have in COP26. Next slide, please. So we come here to define our processes and our expectations. So we said that Paris Agreement was good, but in the implementation is important. Paris Agreement good because we have a preamble paragraph which says we recognize the importance of engagement of all levels of government. And over these years, we said that it's time for implementation. And over these, especially 2 years, we have seen an enormous explosion of new NDCs coming up. So on 31st of October at the World Cities Day, which was for us an historic moment for the first time, this coincidence, we said that it is not just opening 2 weeks, we are opening an era of multi-level action. So we said that our expectation is first, multi-level action becomes the new normal, that every country embraces this let's say, vision and practice. Second, we focus on finance. Third, just climate action, which is from biodiversity to food, from climate justice to culture and youth, from procurement to other circularity. We have to be able to have both at the local level and at the global level. And finally, we as networks should be much better prepared in this new era because there are more invitations to us, more efforts to come. So it was a good thing that it was already in the UN press release database, and we have also communicated this to the parties. We have delivered our statements. So I think that was before the leaders came, we delivered our inputs. So what has gone for now? Next slide, please. Yeah, this is again shows the diversity of countries from the north, to the south, from US to Dominican Republic, from Japan to Rwanda. There is now around 60+ countries who raise their ambitions with local governments, and that is constituting more than 60% of those countries who raised ambitions. This is for us a very important criteria. This is important because to show the world that if you want to raise ambition, you should work with local and regional governments. I think that is now much more evidence-based. There is much more concrete, and there will be more analysis, especially with UN Habitat on Saturday on that front. Next slide, please. So here in COP26, we have multiple era. So we are in the blue zone, which is those who are only access to with the registration badges, which is extremely limited. Conditions are applying, and then there's a green zone events either immediately next door to the river bank of Clyde, or in the city of Glasgow, or even at Edinburgh. So there will be the numerous engagements. What we have seen, we have more than 200 events led by, and when we say event, it's a 60 or 90-minute session with participation either organized by LGMA members or participating as speakers. And we are expecting throughout the 2 weeks around more than 400 representatives of local and regional across the world, particularly from US, Canada, Latin America, obviously Europe. But there's a reality that Africa, Asia are very relatively weaker in terms of their representation. And that's why we want to keep the LGMA pavilion especially hybrid, so that we can have virtual elements. So all the sessions in this pavilion from 8:30 to 6 p.m. Or sometimes 8 p.m. is virtual, so you can participate. Next slide, please. So this pavilion wouldn't be possible without the full support of Scottish government, and without their financial, technical, and political support, it would be almost impossible to have this pavilion space built. This year was particularly difficult because of the restrictions of COVID, but we were not alone. ICLEI is the convener of the space, Scottish Pavilion as the host. We have co-host, Welsh government, City of Glasgow, our initiatives, Urban Leds and Daring Cities. We have a pool of our contributing partners who have helped us financially to manage this process, but also we have session partners who have also contributed into the design of the discussions, so that we are bringing a diversity of voices and diversity of themes, which is in fact, if we go to the next slide, is fully in line with the priorities of the presidency. And that's exactly the challenge. The presidency may have some themes, it may not fully cover our priorities or expectations. That's why we have a design in our sessions that this is also, our voices can be heard, or we can at least express ourselves to the partners across the world. And in this couple of days and 12 days, we have presidents, we have prime ministers, we have youth, we have we have indigenous people communities, we have parliamentarians visiting and joining us. So that is reflecting the multi-level action spirit as well. Next slide, please. You can visit our agenda online, and you can register yourself into the platform, and this enables you to also watch the sessions before. You can interact with the registered participants. So even from here in the blue zone, when you're free, you can log on and watch or listen as well. Next slide, please. So just a brief wrap up. This is just giving some links about what has happened over these days. We have started the World Cities Day with a press conference. We have a video conference recording available. We have nice coverage in the UN as well as global media. The Cities Race to Zero concluded with more than 1,000 participants. We are daily providing bulletins from the pavilion, especially coverage of the pavilion. Pavilion is also covered by ISD Earth Negotiation Bulletin. Every day a special event is selected, and they report this in their platform. We have made interventions at the UNFCCC space. One of our other members of the partners of the LGMA Constituency C40 is also covering the negotiations, and they're releasing their bulletins. So you're also welcome to follow that. Yesterday was the Finance Day, and in addition to the discussions here at the pavilion, we also heard at the Marrakesh Partnership Finance Day, there is a new announcement on the subnational development banks creating a new alliance. Our partner FMDV played a huge role in developing this initiative. So we congratulate that, and this is exactly the type of initiatives that we want to see. And on the same day at the pavilion, we also had other partners like R20, Core Cities UK, CC35 also announcing their initiatives like a new subnational fund. And at the Urban Net Finance session, we also had a discussion on our strategies, and Core Cities also developed released their report. We also noticed that US Conference of Mayors also announced their press release, their delegation. So we will populate these information on the landing page of our LGMA roadmap, so that LGMA website, so that you can easily track this and find this information. Next slide, please. In the next couple of days, we are in critical stages. The process is that in the first week after the world leaders have gone, the negotiators are still following the established contact groups, which is negotiation groups. They will conclude this is called subsidiary body. They will conclude their work on Saturday, but the COP will not be finishing. And that is the moment when the host country, the presidency, takes over the responsibility of leading the negotiations. This means there may be disagreements in the texts, and it's time for presidency to introduce negotiation text that could not be necessarily be reflecting all the consensus that has been achieved or not achieved, and that's their responsibility as the presidency to make sure they can convince all the other partners. So this is the give and take. This is really the huddles that you have heard in the past, that if you do not have any outcome, obviously both developing countries and developed countries will fail. So everybody starts to give some sacrifices, to step back, but it's the presidency's skills to make them feel that there are a lot of gains they are having as well. So until Saturday, it is still the procedure is following through the UN process. Therefore, when we say about the LGMA roadmap, we are focusing on 3 elements: multi-level as the new normal. This has to go through UK presidency, especially the outcomes. And in the multi-level collaboration, we have trying to introduce a new momentum to the UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. You have seen these countries, and we are now advancing our collaboration with the globe, the network of parliamentarians for climate and sustainability, because in this new era of multi-level collaboration, it is important that legislative bodies, through their decision-making powers at the national level, legislative powers, they can support or enforce or influence the executive bodies, be it government, local at the regional level, or federal at the national level. So with Globe, we will have the discussions. We would do our best that we can have their contribution to the management of our network of UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action, which is the countries who are doing this. So we believe this will give us an opportunity that we can, throughout the year, with the parliamentarians, can enforce more, let's say, concrete pressure to local, to national governments. The second point is finance. This will be the make or break agenda of COP26. The biggest issue is that Article 6 is the press or the space where they will define both the future of market mechanisms. We have heard this in the past: emissions trading, clean development mechanism. So this is now being redesigned, and some of the rules, of course, will have to change because the NDCs are in force. But there have been a new introduction, which is the non-market mechanism. The non-market mechanism concept came from developing countries, which is an interesting topic. Some things cannot be traded, or something cannot be easily commercialized, and this gives also an opportunity for us. So imagining the huge investment needed for the new urbanization. You can remember the discussions we all had yesterday. It's not just one tram line. It's not just a couple of buildings or houses. It's not just some waste management. We are talking about new cities being designed. So if we can put this as a non-market mechanism, that the new cities of the world, the new metropolitan areas, the new agglomerations, if they can say that we will be different than business as usual, this is the amount of carbon dioxide that we'll be avoiding because we will not use cement, we will not use steel, we will not consume electricity as much. This is our contribution to the climate space. This is our contribution to NDCs. And if this is a clear reference, then they could go back at home, and the national governments could start to design all urban plans along these perspectives, which gives a huge opportunity that the things that we were not able to do until now can be done much faster. Yesterday at the Urban-led Finance Dialogue, we had good discussion with several partners, including Capital Development Fund, our friends from FMDV. We will work with them, Habitat. So we are now working kind of a pressure group in the corridors today, tomorrow and Saturday. We will try to approach several national governments, especially developing countries, to propose that they put this text onto the table. If they put this on the text, it would be much more important than we say it, because it will be a negotiation document. And the third part is that just transition, Glasgow, Scottish government is very sensitive on that. On the 9th of November, Tuesday, there will be a Just Transition Alliance, and we will see whether we as LGMA can collectively join, or among our members can be, and members can contribute. That also gives us that we have concrete elements that we can take at future. Yesterday, Scottish government announced around £1 million of their contribution to Climate Vulnerable Communities Fund. This again shows subnational governments can contribute to the global efforts. I think this follows the practice from Paris, Quebec. In 2015, they started to invest in green climate funds. Actually, I don't know whether this is continuing. Belgium regions have been doing this. It was estimated around $15 million or so was invested. So it would be good to check this, how much is deployed over these years. So this contribution, Scottish government, in fact, follows this experience, but shows that local governments and regional governments are not always demanding. Through our budgets, through our procurement power, through our legislative power, we can also influence the implementation agenda directly. I think we are, so last slide is, every day we are tracking, as you remember, blue zone agendas and green zone agendas. Green zone is at the moment relatively silent for us. Multi-level action pavilion, I will not go to too much of the details. We have a full agenda on renewable energies starting from 10 a.m. We will have a special time for multi-level dialogue for Africa with Covenant of Mayors Sub-Saharan Africa. We will have discussions of Scottish government as well. These are the highlights that I can remember. And at 4:30, we will welcome to our partners from Canada, who will have a time for multi-level action Canada dialogue. We particularly encourage you to watch or join this session because they have made a huge progress. One thing you can recall, the famous Paris Agreement text, this recognition of importance of engagement of all levels of government, actually came from the Canadian delegation in October 2015 when the negotiations were concluding. And in Canada, you can imagine the provincial governments are important. There are tribal communities. So Canada is literally experiencing a very good version of multi-level collaboration. So we believe it will be a very interesting discussion and an inspiration for other nations as well. At the Blue Zone, negotiations are going. We will try to follow, as we said, Article 6.8. But other than that, the high-level climate champions will share their 2025 vision with the constituency focal points. And at 3 o'clock, there will be open dialogue. This is the presidential event, and this is the moment where parties and non-parties can sit together and speak equally. So they're around the same table. They can discuss and they can share their views. This will be particularly on raising ambition under the Paris Agreement, which fulfills exactly our expectations. So we will invite our delegations. So this is open for all stakeholders. So it's not just cities and regions. Women, youth, trade unions, everyone will be there, obviously limited to 45 minutes, but it will be good, at least on behalf of our constituency, we can have a couple of interventions, preferably from our political leaders, so that they show their presence and voice there. This is the coverage of today's, let's say, updates. Ariel, we have to discuss maybe in the first parts, we cut it a bit shorter in the next days that it's not repeated because this is recorded already. I particularly kept this one a bit long because the Tuesday session was not video recorded, it was only audio. So we could use that, let's say, section in a separate, let's say, caption, and then we can immediately dive into the daily updates. But I think it was important for us that we also keep this as together. So thank you for your patience. We have both participants from the Zoom and also here online, here in person. Anyone who wants to interact, we can definitely now give the floor to you so that you can speak, so that other colleagues in the Zoom can also listen to us. We have until 10 o'clock, around 30 minutes or so. So feel free. Jan, you have been following this process. Anything that you have seen recently or heard, your experience from the couple of days, this could be good. And Harriet is following the biodiversity agenda for a long time, Edinburgh process. On Saturday, there will be a huge agenda here on biodiversity, our subnational engagement. So in that sense, she's one of the newcomers to the climate space as such for us, but I think this is a perfect now bridging because these are not too much isolated worlds, and especially at this COP, we really have much more interaction and synergy. So feel free to interact as you wish. Don't be shy, Harriet.
I'm hardly ever shy. Thanks, Yunus. Well, I mean, I've been following the climate debate for a long time. I did my PhD on Australia's climate politics and started looking at what ICLEI were doing in the early 90s. So feel a bit of it. No, it's fine. And then I've had the last 5 years working on nature and biodiversity and thinking about how the local government agenda is changing there. I think one thing we can see in the Biodiversity Convention is that there is this formal article for the recognition of local governments. I'm just wondering, I mean, has that been anything that you've tried to achieve with climate change? Is it something that you see is on the agenda? So in some senses, there's more recognition for local government and subnational government in the Biodiversity Convention. But on the other hand, maybe there are more different actors in the Climate Convention who are listening to the voices of local and subnational government and who are engaging with the multi-level agenda. So they seem to be in quite different places to me. But yeah, I'm just interested as to whether So in a sense, you have more political recognition, interaction with multiple players here, like you were saying, indigenous peoples, the finance sector, you know, the whole range is here with the climate issue. The biodiversity one is more formalized, but perhaps less attention given. So yeah, it seems like an interesting conundrum to me, you know. So any thoughts or reflections, very welcome.
That is an excellent contribution, Harriet. I'm happy to comment on it, but let's ask Kale first. Any inputs or any feedback so far from the virtual connections? Okay. We have new colleagues joining us. President of Association of European Regions. Welcome. You have also been long time following us, so we will not immediately give you the floor. Just arrived. We just finished the session, but if in case you have anything to input, you're more than welcome. I'm happy to contribute in that discussion because I have also some advantage of following the both process. ICLEI institutional is following the biodiversity through the Cities Biodiversity Center hosted in Africa Secretariat. Our first biodiversity program was announced in 2006 in Cape Town. It's again one of the agendas that our Global South members and offices have been contributing to the global debate. Therefore, we are very happy with this, let's say, notion. And you're definitely true. There are significant differences, and it is important to understand why. Because once we understand why, we can also benefit so that the good elements of each can feed to the other. Just before starting, let's see one very basic differentiation. Climate negotiations is held every year. Biodiversity negotiations held every 2 years. And this year, we had another biodiversity COP in Kunming. And this time they had it in fully virtual plus hybrid, whereas here we have been struggling with this. So why one is deciding with this way and the other one is deciding, nobody knows. Because it's even in the same ministers of environment, why they agreed that the biodiversity negotiations are conducted like that, and this one, we have tried to find an answer, but there's no answer. So these are conventions. They have their different decision-making processes. Even though it's mainly ministers of environment, there's also differentiations. And that's one of the second thing that I noticed. I'm an environmental engineer by profession. Engineers and conservatives have differentiation in terms of even probably because of the way they are dealing with their professions. We are dealing with hardcore concrete pipelines and solid waste, where nature conservation experts are dealing literally with nature. They are much more peaceful. They are much more understanding the power of nature as a healing element rather than we are as fighting against nature. So you can feel it in the negotiations in the biodiversity exactly in the same days. In 2008, we proposed a COP decision for cities in the UNFCCC. We couldn't achieve in the climate space because for climate, cities were always a taboo. In the climate, it's not just cities. Everything that was influencing the national positions were seen as a threat. And climate is too much toxic in terms of politics, finance, and the industries that they are dealing with. So we have seen a positive progress in the climate negotiations over the 2014, 2015. You remember the climate summit in UN, it was for the first time the doors of UN were open. And in that year, the Lima conference adopted a very important decision. You can remember Kyoto Protocol was an agreement and there was compliance mechanism, there were sticks. Canada, for example, was about to be expelled from the negotiations. So the developed countries especially were particularly uncomfortable for this sustainability process imposed on that, so enforcements. That is different than trade agenda. In the trade agenda, it's the developed countries who enforce or the Council, the Security Council or other areas. In the sustainable space, developed countries are a bit in the protective manner. So they try to a bit weaken the enforcement mechanism. That's how Paris Agreement was designed. the main difference between Paris Agreement and Kyoto Protocol is that if you do not fulfill your commitments, there's no one that will be kicking you out of this process. And this is exactly what Freetown Mayor yesterday said. If you don't fulfill it, you're not out. So that's the new UN. So this helped climate process to be much more open for non-party stakeholders, because they said that the national governments, even if the national governments are not fulfilling their targets, UN will not impose them any sanctions. UN will not impose them. It can only just encourage them. They can invite them. In the biodiversity space, the third difference is that parties have particularly acknowledged that with cities and regions, especially with land use planning, with territorial planning, biodiversity teams can be much better handled with their contributions. And that was also very interesting moment that the negotiators in the biodiversity space also said that, or thought that, if we get more cities and subnationals on board, we get more recognition. So you know, in the sustainable agenda, there is a community where climate agenda is a bit seen a bit negative from the other sustainable agendas. They're uncomfortable that climate dominating all the agendas. This goes from conservation until to land use or circularity. There are pros and cons. Let's be realistic. It's not time for discussions, but you cannot isolate climate from any of the sustainable issues, but you cannot also limit everything to climate as well. So we also have to be improving ourselves. So biodiversity negotiators from Brazil to France, from Singapore to Turkey to South Africa, they invited subnationals. They thought that this will be something giving them more recognition at the public level. And as you said, it was not just a decision. We adopted an action plan. So it was much bigger than what we have ever thought in the UN climate space. The first phase of action plan was fully implemented. It produced so many results, and I will leave it to our Africa colleagues, cities biodiversity. On Saturday, we will talk about it. And the good thing is that the Edinburgh process ended a new momentum, and now it is also in the table. It is almost adopted in the negotiations. Coming to this process, what we told to the UK government, it was the Scottish government who kicked off the Edinburgh process with our networks, with the subnationals, and it was the UK government who put forward to the negotiation table of the biodiversity COP. So this was actually a fantastic multi-level collaboration. We recommended the UK government to embrace this and bring this experience to the climate space. Unfortunately, for a long while, it was ignored. I think we are a bit more advancing on that. I'm seeing signals. So we are still encouraging, and that will be one of the outcomes of Saturday. From Saturday onwards, there are discussions how to make benefit of the biodiversity process to feed into the climate space. And let's remember, on Saturday, the official negotiations are finished. It is in the hands of the UK. So UK can bring this back. So that's why we have to be alert and we have to be proactive. It's obvious that we cannot expect the same strength or detail because they worked so long. But of course, in the climate space, for example, we have Marrakesh Partnership. We have so many other alliances. So it's also one of the other differences that in the biodiversity space, things are a bit easy to handle. It is very clear. In the climate space, it's so mushroomed. It is everywhere. There's a city's agenda, and it's a bit demanding to ensure consistency. You haven't noticed, even we cannot follow our own networks, our own events. But it is the reality. I mean, we have to take the benefit of this. So I think these are the main points of differentiation. But I'm very happy that the processes are talking to each other and helping each other. Anyone would like to welcome Rana from REN 21 to our home of subnationals from REN 21. Welcome, Rana. How are you? Thanks for joining us. So just for those who are not aware, RAN 21 is a global intergovernmental and multi-stakeholder initiative, and Rana is the Secretariat of the process, and they are very strongly supportive of our agenda. They have released the State of Renewable Energy in Cities report last year, and they have been also pushing the agenda. And I think today you will be very busy, so good luck and thanks a lot for all your contributions. If this is our internal coordination mechanism, it's also virtually broadcasted. If you have any messages, feel free to share. We will have a couple of more minutes of our discussion. So welcome once again. Any contributions? So,
Thank you, Yunus. It's okay. Just one remark. First, we are very happy because now the COP had just begun yesterday. Negotiation is on because from yesterday, CCTV are totally full now. The room are full. 2 days before, nothing. That's good, but unfortunately, as you said, you have only now 4 days of negotiation for the technical parts. And unfortunately, cities are not on the table. Everybody likes to say, yes, I exaggerate maybe a little bit, but everybody likes to say that cities represented 70% of GHG emissions. If we are so huge, we have not a direct access. So yes, the good that there is an opening dialogue, and I know you will be there on advocacy, and it's good, but it's not enough. It's not enough. So we have to work with all the delegation to improve the part of the city recognitions and the actions. And yesterday we have very, very few information about how to fund city solutions. We talk about the states level and so on. And during the World Labour Summits, maybe 5-10 states, no more, talk about other cities, about the multi-level actions, about multi-stakeholders, not only cities, but all the stakeholders from the territory. We are here, we can gather everyone, and you think that there is only the World Leader Summit that can decide for the world. And yesterday they say, yeah, I will put more money. Maybe after 2023. And you have said that already before. The cap of $100 billion for adaptation and mitigation has been decided a year before Copenhagen. So in 2008, and in 12 years, we didn't achieve that. And I would say, yeah, maybe it's possible for 2023. Hey guys, the decades, we have already spent 20% of the time of the decade. So hopes today that there will be positive negotiations, but 4 days.
Any additional contribution from the floor, Rana, Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Yunus. Actually, I think what is really interesting from our side is, so as Yunus mentioned, RAN 21 has produced status report on renewable energy in cities. And I feel that similar to what you said before, the renewable energy topic is still not very well connected to the climate topic. This phase out of fossil fuel, but also building up the alternatives, which is energy saving, efficiency, and renewables is fundamental. And I think here's really an opportunity, because we clearly see that exactly for the reason that have been mentioned, the CO2 emission, the energy consumption in cities, GDP, but also the environment, which allows to not only address basically the shift in the electricity sector, but also in heating, cooling, and in transportation. Cities have a fundamental role to play here, and a stronger integration between the regulatory frameworks of the national level, subnational, and city level is really important. So I think it's also interesting to see how from the sustainable energy voice and the city's voice, we can further strengthen joint messages, because it's really fundamental. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Magnus Berntsson, the president of the Assembly of European Regions, and I totally agree with what has said before. Thank you, Janos. Thank you, Rania, for your contributions. And let me just mention one other thing, and that is the cooperation between the local and the regional side with our business side, with the industry. And if we are going to manage this fantastic transition that is going on, energy is needed. Electrification goes much quicker than we ever thought. 5 years ago, no one could imagine that what happens, but there are a lot of obstacles on the way. But on the local and the regional side, we see this, how it is, because we need to deal with the situation as it is, not so much only on the principal side, but to deal with this development. And I think this cooperation that is built in many regions and many cities together with the local business and the industry is really a huge part of the solution, but also could be used in pushing the negotiations in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to put my climate and energy hat on now rather than my biodiversity one. But because one of the things that we can notice in all of the declarations that came out on Tuesday around the mission innovations is that most of those technological missions are focused on technologies that have to be put somewhere, but with very little consideration for how they would develop on a regional or local basis. So we have these new commitments to a hydrogen economy, a huge new commitment to an electric vehicle economy, but an electric vehicle economy is no economy if it can't be plugged in somewhere, right? So all of those kind of considerations and questions about what is going to be the local dimension or the urban dimension of those mission innovations has not really been thought through at all. And as I understand it, those mission innovation statements were the first set of these leadership goals, right? These Glasgow breakthroughs. And that there should be further breakthroughs in the future. And I think that they are considering a city's breakthrough. This is how I understand the discussion so far, but I am not sure that they are talking to this constituency in the way that is necessary if such a city's breakthrough is actually going to be one that cities think will work for them, right? And not just a technological vision for the kind of ideal city rather than the cities that actually exist where we need to work these things through, right?
Yeah, you're living, but we'll stay in touch. So, and you know some of the answers that I have, so it's not a problem. Any input from the Zoom? No. Joe, can you come back once again to the chart with the countries, the Venn diagram? So we have 7 or 8 minutes. First of all, thanks for all your inputs. Coming to the first, let's say, frustration or disappointment, this COP especially was unique because of really the way design changed significantly because of the COVID, including its participation, inclusiveness, because of the restrictions. So, and let's remember, we have also a very powerful presidency. I mean, the advantage of working with a powerful presidency is that they have a lot of resources to introduce. It has its own weaknesses because they have this, you don't have this. So I'm trying to be diplomatic because this will be webcasted, it's still webcasted. On the Leaders Summit, the constituencies, the youth, the trade unions, the gender groups, the 9 traditional ones since 1992, we have expressed our disappointment and concerns that the World Leaders Summit was not designed with our inputs, and they have expressed very clearly since the beginning. Presidency, if you look at the presidency's webpage, it says this is being done in collaboration with the UK diplomatic missions. Of course, they have the right. Every presidency have this right. But I think there is also a very thin line. There are some partnerships or processes coming from action agenda partners. But again, the way World Leaders Summit was designed was purely out of our hands. So we will see how the announcements will make any difference. But there's also a clear reality. since Paris Agreement, since the notion of NDCs, we are over of these statements, campaigns, announcements. The thing that matters is what you have in your NDCs. Anything beyond is just talk shop. Let's not say that. There are others who are saying this. I mean, we are not against that. These kind of new campaigns should come, of course. It's not bad, but if it is not in the real place, there's the accountability. I mean, we have seen all these things. It's where they are. Some of them are gone or forgotten. So let's change this moment. But very likely, starting from Glasgow onwards, things will be a bit different. So that the reason why I'm showing this is that, let's recall, there are more than 60 countries who have not referred at all to climate or cities in their first NDCs, but now they refer it. There are some countries who clearly raised their ambitions because they work with their local governments. This is including US, this is including Japan, Korea. There are countries who has a huge chapter on cities, Dominican Republic, Rwanda, Zimbabwe. It's unbelievable. So this is something that is coming up. And that's why we're saying time for multi-level action has come. So whatever happens here will not take this away back. If we have now more than 60 countries, 2 years later, there will be global stocktake. In the Paris Agreement, we worked hard to put in the recommendation of the domestic arrangements to ask them to have multi-level discussions in the preparations of their NDCs. It was rejected at that time. These are done with multi-level collaboration without necessarily UNFCCC guidance, because it was their local and regional governments that their governments agreed this at the national level. And it's inevitable that if you now go back to Laos, 2 years later, when they see that, okay, you have written this, what did you do? Dominican Republic, if you have all your local governments, if Korea, so now report. So it is like the diplomacy or UN space has to accept a multi-level world is coming. Therefore, we have to be seeing the direction we are going, that we are in the right way, but not everything is immediately reflected today or in this room directly. And therefore, we are saying that for us, actually for us, COP finished on 31st of October, because on the World Cities Day, we said that we have done it. Whatever comes is just a bonus. Whatever comes is just strengthening, but it will never take it back. We will never go back from those countries that, I mean, there can be models. I mean, once upon a time, Brazil was in this list and US was not in this list. So national agenda is also changing, true, but that is the beauty, that there is much more scrutiny and collaboration and transparency that will give opportunities for us, that we will not step back, we will not backtrack, but we will just go better. So that is why I believe being here is important, still giving impetus, but more work at home. That's what we said. The success of Glasgow depends on your work at home. Those countries and those local and regional governments on these countries delivered their homework. It's a big applaud for them, so that their national document is now clearly referring to that. And it could be much better, of course. It could have been much. We are discussing if all the Korean cities, if all Japanese cities have done their commitments, and if it was much strongly reflected, maybe Japan or Korean NDCs could have been much more ambitious in terms of targets. The same goes to Canada, the same goes to US, EU even. EU is also good, but there's very hard documentation that Covenant of Mayors commitments are reflected in the EU commitments. No, it doesn't exist. So huge role to play, that we should improve it. And that's why we are making this conference every year, so that we can make pressure and progress. So that is a lessons back home. There's a homework to take home. That's why all these rooms are filled with negotiators, but cities and regions across the world, so that they took back these lessons and messages. So I still want to be communicating the message that we have to be positive. We are on the right track. We just have to be faster and bigger in terms of our achievements. I would like to invite us like a wrap up now, because we have a next session starting at 10 and we have to have the room for hygiene and cleaning. But I'm very happy to both all your attention and contributions. This was exactly the mission of this daily briefing, so that we keep each other updated. If Joe, can you go to the calendar of today, especially for our leaders? So for today at 3, there's the open dialogue of presidency, and you have been a part of this before. So you're one of those that is, let's say, acquainted. So I recommend you to put it in your calendar and share it with others. We'll also keep our LGMA contacts so that it is free. I mean, you just take your, raise your hand and you and participate. And then the high level champions with constituencies is also slightly open a bit. I don't know exactly if it's beyond focal points or not. So that's the things that, and here, now we will have a discussion on 100% renewables. Rana, are you taking part in that discussion? Perfect. This will be an Urban Nets, ICLEI's Urban Nets partnership and RAN 21. We will have at lunchtime high-level dialogue for Africa. Sorry, multi-level dialogue for Africa with ComSSA. At 4:30, we will have a dialogue of Canada. And we have also the agenda from the Scottish government delegations. Joe, do you remember? There was the agendas today. Yeah, I now found it. UK Buildings Council coming here for the Scotland launch of their Scotland program at 11:30. So with this, I all thank you once again, and we'll be here tomorrow at 8:30 again, and we'll continue. Let's keep each other also informed during the day. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for the colleagues who are recording, and good luck for the next sessions. Thanks for coming.